The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced through the cramped studio apartment at 5:30 a.m. Maya Rodriguez rolled over on her lumpy mattress, her hand automatically reaching to silence the noise before it could wake Mrs. Chen next door. The elderly woman had been kind enough to let Maya slide on rent twice this month, and the last thing she needed was to disturb her sleep. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Maya's feet hit the cold linoleum floor as she shuffled toward the tiny kitchenette. The refrigerator hummed loudly, its ancient motor working overtime to keep her meager groceries cool. Inside sat the remnants of her weekly meal prep: 3 containers of rice and beans, half a loaf of bread, and a carton of milk that would expire tomorrow. She grabbed one container and popped it into the microwave that took 3 tries to start. While her breakfast heated, Maya checked her phone. 17 missed calls from her mother in Phoenix, 3 text messages from her best friend Jessica, and a notification that her student loan payment was overdue. Again. She swiped away the notifications, unable to deal with them before her first job of the day. By 6:15 a.m., Maya was walking the 12 blocks to Sunrise Diner, where she worked the opening shift as a waitress. The morning air was crisp, and she pulled her second-hand jacket tighter around her shoulders. The jacket had been a find at the thrift store last month, originally a designer piece that someone had donated, now serving as her only protection against the Chicago wind. The diner was already busy when she arrived. Construction workers grabbed quick coffee before heading to job sites, and early commuters picked up breakfast sandwiches. Maya tied her apron around her waist and grabbed the coffee pot, beginning her routine of greeting regulars and taking orders. "Morning, honey," called out Frank, a regular who always sat in booth 3. "The usual?" "Coming right up, Frank," Maya replied with a smile that had become second nature. 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, and black coffee. She'd memorized dozens of these orders over the past 2 years. The morning rush lasted until 10 a.m., when Maya finally got a 5-minute break. She stepped into the back alley and called her mother. "Mija, I've been trying to reach you," her mother's voice came through the phone, heavy with concern. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry. Work has been crazy." "Maya, you can't keep doing this to yourself. Working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, come home to Phoenix. Your Uncle Carlos said he could get you something at the warehouse." Maya leaned against the brick wall, closing her eyes. Her mother meant well, but going back to Phoenix felt like admitting defeat. She'd come to Chicago with dreams of finishing her business degree at Northwestern, but those dreams had been derailed when her father's medical bills wiped out the family's savings. "I'm fine here, Mom. Really, I just need a little more time to get back on my feet." After hanging up, Maya returned to her shift, mechanically serving customers and clearing tables. At 2 p.m., she clocked out and walked 15 blocks to her second job at a small accounting firm, where she worked as a file clerk and receptionist. The office was quiet compared to the diner. Maya organized invoices, answered phones, and entered data into spreadsheets. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid better than waitressing and gave her a glimpse into the business world she'd studied in her 2 years of college. During her lunch break, she sat in the small break room and pulled out her phone. Jessica had been texting her all morning about tonight's blind date. "Girl, you have to go tonight. Derek's friend sounds perfect for you. He's sweet, has a good job, and he's actually looking for something serious. Plus, when's the last time you did something fun for yourself?" Maya stared at the messages. Jessica had been trying to set her up for months, insisting that Maya needed to, quote, "get back out there" after her last relationship had ended badly 6 months ago. The truth was, Maya barely had time for sleep, let alone dating. But Jessica was persistent, and Maya finally agreed just to get her friend to stop worrying about her love life. The plan was simple: meet at Romano's Cafe at 7 p.m. Jessica had given her the guy's number, Brad Thompson, and told her to text him to confirm. Maya had been putting it off all day, dreading the awkwardness of texting a complete stranger. At 5 p.m., she finished her shift at the accounting firm and took the bus across town to her third job, a cleaning service that handled office buildings downtown. She changed into her cleaning uniform in the bathroom of a McDonald's, stuffing her other clothes into her backpack. For the next 3 hours, Maya vacuumed carpets, emptied trash cans, and wiped down desks in a gleaming corporate tower. As she worked, she thought about the people who occupied these offices during the day. Their family photos on their desks, their expensive coffee machines, their view of the city from the 40th floor. A world so different from her own. By 8:30 p.m., Maya was exhausted but finally heading home. She'd completely forgotten about the blind date until her phone buzzed with another text from Jessica. "Please tell me you didn't stand up Derek's friend. He's probably waiting for you right now." Maya's heart sank. In her rush between jobs, she'd completely spaced on texting Brad to cancel. She quickly pulled up her contacts, but realized she'd never actually saved his number. Jessica had given it to her verbally 3 days ago, and Maya had meant to write it down. She called Jessica, but it went straight to voicemail. Probably at her Friday night yoga class. Maya tried to remember the number. It started with 555, but was it 7,829 or 7,892? She thought it might be 7,829. Standing on the bus platform, exhausted and feeling terrible about potentially standing someone up, Maya decided to text an apology. She quickly typed out a message. "Hi Brad, this is Maya. I'm so sorry, but I can't make it tonight. Had a family emergency and completely lost track of time. I feel terrible about this. Rain check?" She hit send to 5557829 and immediately felt a wave of relief. At least she'd done the right thing by reaching out. Meanwhile, across the city in a penthouse office overlooking Lake Michigan, Alexander Sterling was reviewing quarterly reports when his phone buzzed. The 28-year-old CEO of Sterling Enterprises glanced at the unknown number, displaying a message clearly meant for someone else. Alexander had built his family's small investment firm into a billion-dollar empire through strategic acquisitions and an uncanny ability to spot market trends. He was known in business circles as brilliant but ruthless, a man who didn't have time for anything that didn't contribute to his bottom line. His personal life was equally calculated, a series of relationships with equally ambitious women that never lasted more than a few months. He stared at the text message. "Maya, a family emergency." The casual, genuine tone was so different from the formal communications he usually received. Most people who had his personal number were business associates, board members, or social climbers trying to get his attention. For reasons he couldn't quite explain, Alexander found himself typing back, "No problem at all. Hope everything's okay with your family. Maybe another time?" Maya's phone buzzed just as she was climbing the stairs to her apartment. She was surprised by how understanding Brad seemed. Most guys would have been annoyed by a last-minute cancellation. "Thank you for being so sweet about it. Definitely another time. Have a good evening." Alexander smiled at his phone, an expression that would have shocked his business associates. There was something refreshingly honest about this exchange. No agenda, no attempt to impress or manipulate, just a genuine person dealing with life's unexpected challenges. He typed back, "You too. Take care of yourself." As Maya fell asleep that night on her uncomfortable mattress, she thought about how nice Brad had seemed. Maybe Jessica was right. Maybe there were still good guys out there. 20 floors above the city, Alexander Sterling found himself thinking about a girl named Maya he'd never met, wondering what kind of family emergency had derailed her evening and why her simple honesty had made more of an impression on him than any of the carefully orchestrated social events he attended. Neither of them realized that a simple wrong number had just set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. The following Monday started like any other for Maya. She was halfway through her morning shift at Sunrise Diner when her phone buzzed with a text from the number she thought belonged to Brad. "Hope your family situation worked out okay. How was your weekend?" Maya paused while refilling Frank's coffee cup. It was unusual for someone to follow up so genuinely after a canceled date. Most guys would have written her off completely. During her break, she texted back, "Much better, thank you for asking. How was yours?" Alexander was in the middle of a board meeting when he saw her response. He'd been thinking about their brief exchange all weekend, which was completely unlike him. His weekends were usually filled with networking events, charity galas, or strategic golf games. This weekend, he'd found himself declining 2 social invitations, instead staying home with a book, something he hadn't done in years. Quiet weekend. Caught up on some reading. What do you do when you're not dealing with family emergencies? Maya smiled at the question. "I'm a professional multitasker. Waitress by morning, office worker by afternoon, cleaning lady by night, living the dream." Alexander stared at his phone in surprise. 3 jobs? He tried to imagine someone working that hard just to survive. In his world, people complained about having too many meetings or social obligations. The idea of someone working 3 jobs to make ends meet was foreign to him, yet he found her humor about it remarkable. Preparing and narrating the story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That's impressive. Most people complain about one job. Well, rent doesn't pay itself. What about you? What do you do? Alexander hesitated. How did he explain that he ran a billion-dollar company to someone who worked 3 jobs? He decided on a simplified version. I work in investments. Pretty boring office stuff. Over the next few days, their texting became more frequent. Maya would send him funny observations from the diner during her breaks. Alexander found himself looking forward to these messages more than his usual business communications. The customer just asked me if we have gluten-free water. I told him all our water is naturally gluten-free. He seemed relieved. Do you always have to keep a straight face during these conversations? Years of practice, though sometimes I have to bite my tongue pretty hard. Alexander discovered that Maya had been studying business at Northwestern before financial problems forced her to drop out. She was smart, asking thoughtful questions about investments and economics during their conversations. Ever think about going back to school? He texted one afternoon. Every day. But tuition is expensive, and I can't afford to stop working, maybe someday when I've saved enough. What would you study? I'd love to finish my business degree, maybe open my own restaurant or cafe someday. Something small but special. What about you? Always knew you wanted to be in investments? Alexander realized he'd never really chosen his career path. It had been chosen for him. His father had built Sterling Enterprises, and Alexander had simply stepped into the role that was expected of him. Honestly, I inherited most of it. Sometimes I wonder what I would have chosen if I'd had a real choice. It's never too late to choose something different. What would you do if money wasn't a factor? The question stayed with Alexander for hours. When had he stopped thinking about what he actually wanted? On Thursday, Maya was having a particularly rough day. The morning rush at the diner had been chaotic, with 2 waitresses calling in sick. At the accounting firm, her boss had piled extra filing on her desk without any acknowledgement of the overtime it would require. By the time she got to her cleaning job, she was exhausted and frustrated. She found herself texting Brad during her break. Sorry if I'm not very chatty tonight. Today feels like one of those days where everything goes wrong, and you wonder if you're on the right path. Alexander was at a corporate dinner when he received the message. He excused himself and stepped onto the restaurant's balcony to respond. We all have those days. What would make tomorrow better? Honestly, 8 hours of sleep and not having to worry about money for just one day. Simple dreams, right? Alexander stared out at the city lights, thinking about Maya somewhere out there, probably exhausted from working her 3rd job of the day. On impulse, he typed, "Would you like to meet for coffee this weekend? My treat. Sounds like you could use a friend." Maya's heart skipped. After a week of texting, she was curious about this Brad guy, who seemed so different from other men she'd met. He was thoughtful, asked real questions, and never made her feel bad about her situation. I'd like that, but fair warning, I'm not great company when I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. I'll take my chances. How about Romano's Cafe on Saturday at 2 p.m.? Perfect. How will I recognize you? Alexander paused. He'd been so caught up in their conversations that he'd forgotten they'd never actually met. I'll be wearing a blue button-down. About 6'2", dark hair. You? I'll be the one who looks like she needs more sleep. Brown hair, probably in a ponytail. I'll wear something red so you can spot me. After confirming their plans, Maya felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She hadn't been on a real date in months, and she found herself genuinely looking forward to meeting this person who'd been such a bright spot in her week. Alexander, meanwhile, was dealing with his own internal conflict. He'd never lied about who he was before, but somehow the conversation had evolved beyond his control. Maya knew him as someone who worked in investments. Technically true, but hardly the full picture. He told himself he'd explain everything when they met. Friday passed slowly for both of them. Maya picked up an extra shift at the diner to make sure she'd have money for coffee, even though Brad had said it was his treat. She'd learned not to depend on anyone else's promises when it came to money. Alexander found himself distracted during meetings, checking his phone more often than usual. His assistant, Patricia, noticed his unusual behavior. "Sir, the Williamson contract needs your signature, and you have the charity board meeting at 4. "Right, yes." Alexander signed the contract without his usual careful review. "Actually, Patricia, cancel my dinner plans tomorrow. Something came up." Patricia raised an eyebrow. Alexander Sterling never canceled social obligations, especially not last minute. Saturday afternoon arrived with an unexpected rainstorm. Maya stood outside Romano's cafe, checking her phone nervously. She'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on a simple red sweater and jeans, the nicest outfit she owned. Alexander arrived 5 minutes early, also feeling uncharacteristically nervous. He'd chosen a casual blue shirt and dark jeans, trying to look approachable rather than intimidating. As he approached the cafe, he saw a young woman with brown hair and a ponytail, wearing red, checking her phone by the entrance. Even from a distance, he could see the exhaustion in her posture, but also something vibrant and genuine that drew him forward. This had to be Maya. Maya looked up as a tall, well-dressed man approached. He was definitely handsome, but something about him seemed different from what she'd expected. There was an intensity in his eyes, and his clothes, while casual, looked expensive. "Maya?" Alexander asked, his voice tentative. "Brad," she replied, though something in the back of her mind wondered if this was really the same person who worked in boring office stuff. They stood there for a moment, both sensing that something was different than they'd anticipated, but neither quite able to put their finger on what it was. "Should we head inside?" Alexander suggested, opening the door for her. As they found a table in the cozy cafe, both Maya and Alexander realized they were about to discover just how much they didn't know about each other, and how complicated honesty could be when you were already falling for someone you'd never actually met. Alexander stood outside Maya's apartment building in the pouring rain, his heart pounding harder than it ever had during any business negotiation. The past week had been torture, endless sleepless nights replaying their last conversation, the devastated look in her eyes when she'd walked away from him. He'd tried calling her dozens of times, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Jessica had finally agreed to give him Maya's address after he'd practically begged, explaining everything that had happened. Even then, Jessica had made it clear that if he hurt her best friend again, she'd personally make his life miserable. The lobby door was propped open by a maintenance worker carrying tools. Alexander slipped inside and climbed the narrow stairs to the 4th floor, his expensive shoes echoing in the cramped stairwell. He'd never been in a building like this. The peeling paint, the flickering fluorescent lights, the smell of cooking from a dozen different apartments. It was a stark reminder of the worlds that separated them. He found apartment 4B and knocked gently. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. "Maya, I know you're in there. Please, just give me 5 minutes." From inside, he heard movement, then Maya's voice, tired and hollow. "Go away, Alexander. I mean it. I'm not leaving until you let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. I get it." The rich guy was bored and decided to play with the poor girl's feelings for entertainment. Message received. Alexander pressed his forehead against the door. "That's not what happened. That's not what this is." "Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me from day one." "You're right. I did lie, but not about how I feel about you." Silence. Then the sound of locks turning. The door opened just a crack, and Maya's eyes appeared, red and swollen from crying. "You have 5 minutes. Then I never want to see you again." She opened the door fully, and Alexander stepped into the tiny studio apartment. He took in the makeshift kitchen, the mattress on the floor, the single window overlooking the fire escape. This was Maya's world, and suddenly his penthouse felt cold and empty by comparison. Maya stood with her arms crossed, maintaining distance between them. She was wearing an old t-shirt and jeans, her hair pulled back messily, and she'd never looked more beautiful to him. "Explain," she said simply. Alexander took a deep breath. "The night you texted me by mistake, I was sitting in my office, reviewing quarterly reports, planning my next acquisition. It was a Friday night, and I was alone, working, like I always am. Then your text came through. This genuine, warm message from someone who was clearly a good person dealing with a real problem." He began pacing in the small space. "I've spent my entire life surrounded by people who want something from me. Money, connections, status. Every conversation is calculated, every relationship is strategic. But your text was just real, humans. I couldn't resist responding. Maya's expression remained guarded. So you decided to catfish me? No, I decided to be honest for once in my life. When I talked to you, I wasn't Alexander Sterling, Billionaire CEO. I was just Alex. A guy who actually enjoyed having real conversations with someone who made him laugh. Someone who challenged him to think about what he actually wanted from life. But you lied about who you were. I simplified it, yes. But Maya, everything else was real. Every conversation, every feeling, every moment we spent together. That was the real me. I never get to be with anyone else. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. How am I supposed to believe that? You live in a world I can't even imagine. You probably spend more on dinner than I make in a month. Alexander stopped pacing and looked directly at her. You're right. And that's exactly why I fell for you. You don't want anything from me except honest conversation and genuine connection. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Alexander, we're from completely different worlds. This doesn't work in real life. It's not some romantic movie where love conquers all. You think I don't know that? Alexander's voice rose with frustration. You think I haven't spent this entire week analyzing every logical reason why this is impossible? You think my family and board of directors are going to be thrilled that I'm in love with a waitress? Maya's breath caught. You're what? Alexander realized what he'd just said. He sat down heavily on her small couch, putting his head in his hands. I'm in love with you, Maya. Completely, terrifyingly in love with you. And I know it's crazy, and I know it complicates everything, but it's the most real thing I've ever felt. Maya stared at him, her defenses beginning to crumble. Alex, I know you feel it too. The way you looked at me when we were walking by the lake, the way you laughed at my terrible jokes, the way you made me feel like I could be a better person, that wasn't fake. That was real. It was real, Maya admitted quietly. But Alexander, look around. This is my life. I work 3 jobs just to afford this tiny apartment. I eat rice and beans for dinner most nights. I can't even afford to finish college. What kind of life could we possibly have together? Alexander stood up and walked over to her. What if money wasn't an issue? But it is an issue. It's always going to be an issue. I won't be your charity case, and I won't let you pay my way through life. What if I told you I want to change careers? What if I told you that talking to you made me realize I've been living someone else's life for the past 10 years? Maya looked up at him, confused. What do you mean? I mean, I've been thinking about what you asked me, what I would do if I had a real choice. And I realized I want to do something that matters. Something that helps people instead of just making rich people richer. Alexander, you can't just throw away your entire life because of some texts and a few dates. I'm not throwing it away, I'm finally choosing it. Alexander sat down next to her on the couch. Maya, I've already started putting things in motion. I'm stepping down as CEO and transitioning to chairman. I'm starting a foundation focused on educational opportunities for people who can't afford college. And I want you to help me run it. Maya's eyes widened. What? You understand what it's like to have dreams that feel impossible because of money. You know what real barriers look like. I have the resources, but you have the perspective and the heart. We could actually make a difference. You're serious. Dead serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Alexander took her hands. Maya, I don't want to change your world. I want to join it. I want to build something new with you. Maya felt tears starting again, but this time they weren't from sadness. Alexander, that's beautiful, but nothing. I love you. Not despite who you are, but because of who you are. You made me remember that there's more to life than profit margins and board meetings. You made me want to be someone worthy of your respect. Maya looked into his eyes and saw the truth there. This wasn't the calculating businessman she'd met in his office. This was Alex, the person she'd fallen for through their late-night texts and coffee shop conversations. What if it doesn't work? She whispered. Then we'll figure it out together. But Maya, what if it does work? What if we could build something amazing together? Maya felt the last of her walls crumbling. I love you too, she said softly. I tried so hard not to, but I do. Alexander cupped her face in his hands. So what do you say? Want to change the world with a reformed billionaire? Maya laughed through her tears. That depends. Are you still going to text me good morning every day? Every single day for the rest of my life, if you'll let me. She leaned into him, feeling truly safe for the first time in years. I guess I should probably save your real number in my phone this time. Probably a good idea. 6 months later, Maya stood in the renovated space that would house the Sterling Rodriguez Foundation. The name had been Alexander's idea. He'd insisted they be equal partners in everything. She was wearing a simple black dress, her hair styled professionally, addressing a room full of potential scholarship recipients. "I know what it feels like to believe your dreams are too expensive," she told the crowd of young people. "I know what it's like to work 3 jobs and still not have enough. But I also know that sometimes, when you least expect it, life gives you a chance to rewrite your story." In the back of the room, Alexander watched with pride as Maya spoke passionately about second chances and the power of education. She'd finished her business degree through an accelerated program, and together they'd created something neither of them could have accomplished alone. After the event, as they walked hand in hand through the city, Maya looked up at the man who'd started as a wrong number and became her whole world. "Any regrets?" she asked. Alexander squeezed her hand. "Only one." "What's that?" "I wish you'd texted the wrong number sooner." Maya laughed, pulling him closer. "Well, when you put it that way, I'm pretty grateful for my terrible memory for phone numbers." As they walked into their future together, neither of them could have imagined that a simple mistake would lead to the most important connection of their lives. Sometimes, the wrong turn leads to exactly where you're supposed to be. The foundation had officially launched 3 weeks earlier with their first class of 50 scholarship recipients. Maya had insisted on personally interviewing each applicant, seeing herself in their stories of financial struggle and academic ambition. One girl, Carmen, reminded Maya so much of herself that she'd actually cried during the interview. "I work at a grocery store after school and babysit on weekends," Carmen had explained. "My mom cleans offices at night. We're saving every penny for college, but it's never enough. This scholarship would change everything for my family." Maya had looked across the table at Alexander, who was taking notes and nodding thoughtfully. Later, he'd pulled Maya aside. "We need to expand the program," he'd said. "If there are more kids like Carmen out there, we're barely scratching the surface." That conversation had led to their current project, opening a second location in Phoenix, near where Maya had grown up. They'd visited her hometown the previous month, and Maya had been shocked to see how many young people were trapped in the same cycle of poverty she'd escaped. Her mother had been overwhelmed when they'd announced their plans to establish a foundation branch there. "Misha, I always knew you were meant for something special," she'd said, tears streaming down her face. "But this is beyond anything I ever dreamed for you." Alexander had fit in surprisingly well with Maya's family. Her uncle Carlos had been skeptical at first. "Rich guys don't usually stick around when things get tough," he'd warned Maya privately. But after spending an afternoon working alongside Alexander to help repair her cousin's roof, Carlos had changed his tune. "He's got good hands," Carlos had reported to the family that evening, "and he listens when you talk. That's rare in a man, rich or poor." Now, walking through the Chicago evening, Maya reflected on how much had changed, not just in her circumstances, but in her understanding of what was possible. She'd gone from believing she was destined for a life of financial struggle to co-founding an organization that would impact thousands of lives. "Penny for your thoughts," Alexander said, noticing her contemplative mood. "Just thinking about Carmen. Did you see her face when we told her she got the scholarship?" "I did. Reminds me of your face when you told me about your dreams of finishing college." Maya smiled. "She's going to study engineering. Her goal is to design affordable housing. Isn't that amazing?" "It is. And in 4 years, she'll probably be teaching us things we never thought of." They stopped at a red light, and Maya noticed a couple arguing loudly on the corner. The woman was crying, and the man was gesturing angrily while talking on his phone. It reminded Maya of some of her darkest moments, the nights when everything felt hopeless, when she'd wondered if she'd ever escape the endless cycle of working just to survive. "You know what I keep thinking about?" Maya said as they continued walking. "What's that?" "How many Mayas are out there right now? How many people are working 3 jobs, eating rice and beans, dreaming of something better but thinking it's impossible?" Alexander squeezed her hand. "And now we get to prove them wrong. It still feels surreal sometimes. Like I'm going to wake up back in my studio apartment, setting my alarm for another 5:30 a.m. shift at the diner. Would that scare you?" Maya considered the question seriously. You know what? It wouldn't. because now I know that even the worst circumstances don't define what's possible. If I had to start over tomorrow, I'd do it differently. I'd believe in myself sooner. That's growth. What about you? Any regrets about leaving the corporate world behind? Alexander laughed. Are you kidding? The board meeting I had to sit through today was about scholarship criteria and program expansion. A year ago, my meetings were about maximizing profits for people who already had more money than they could spend in a lifetime. Which sounds more fulfilling to you? Definitely the scholarships. Though I have to ask, do you miss any of it? The power, the luxury, the recognition? Honestly, the only thing I miss is efficiency. When you have unlimited resources, you can solve problems faster. Now we have to be more creative, more strategic, but that's also more satisfying. They'd reached their apartment building, a compromise between Maya's studio and Alexander's penthouse. It was a nice 2-bedroom, in a good neighborhood but not ostentatiously expensive. Maya had insisted on paying half the rent with her salary from the foundation, and Alexander had agreed after some negotiation. As they climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. How did the event go tonight? Did that reporter from the Tribune show up? Maya showed the message to Alexander. Should I tell her about the interview request from 60 Minutes? Let's see how the Tribune article goes first. I still can't believe they want to do a feature on us. You can't believe it, Alexander? We've created something newsworthy. We've changed lives. You should be proud. I am proud. It's just, a year ago, the only news I made was about acquisitions and stock prices. This feels more important. Inside their apartment, Maya kicked off her heels and immediately felt more like herself. The space was comfortable but not extravagant, furnished with pieces they'd chosen together, including a couch from Maya's favorite thrift store that Alexander had initially been puzzled by but now loved. I have something to tell you, Alexander said, settling beside her on the thrift store couch. Maya felt a flutter of nervousness. Good or bad? Good thing. Great something, actually. He pulled out his phone and showed her an email. The Gates Foundation wants to partner with us. Maya's eyes widened as she read. Alexander, this is huge. They want to fund expansion to 10 more cities? 20 more cities. And they want to use our model as a template for similar programs internationally. Maya set down the phone and stared at him. 20 cities. Do you realize how many students that could help? Thousands, maybe tens of thousands, depending on how we structure it. Maya felt tears forming again. A year ago, I was worried about making rent. Now we're going to impact tens of thousands of lives? We're going to change the world, Maya, just like we talked about. She curled up next to him, still processing the magnitude of what they were building. Sometimes I think about that night when I texted the wrong number. What if I hadn't? What if you hadn't responded? What if either of us had made one different choice? Then 2 people would have missed out on the best thing that ever happened to them. And thousands of students would have missed their chance at education. See, the universe has a sense of humor. And excellent timing. Maya laughed, feeling the truth of it. Jessica always said I had terrible luck with technology. Turns out it was the best luck I ever had. Remind me to send Jessica a thank you gift. For what? For insisting you go on that blind date. If she hadn't pushed you, you never would have needed to cancel, and you never would have texted me. Maya considered this. So really, we owe our entire relationship to Jessica's meddling and my inability to remember phone numbers correctly. The 2 most beautiful character flaws in history. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both thinking about the journey that had brought them here. Outside, the city continued its evening rhythm. People heading home from work, couples out for dinner, students studying late in coffee shops. Somewhere out there, Maya knew, there were people working multiple jobs, struggling to make ends meet, dreaming of opportunities that felt out of reach. Alexander? Promise me something. Anything. Promise me we'll never forget what it felt like to struggle. Promise me we'll never lose sight of why we're doing this. Alexander turned to face her fully. I promise. But Maya, I need you to promise me something too. What? Promise me you'll never doubt that you deserve all of this. The success, the love, the opportunity to make a difference. You didn't just get lucky. You worked for this, you earned this, and you're going to do incredible things with it. Maya felt the familiar sting of happy tears. Even after all this time, Alexander had a way of seeing her more clearly than she saw herself. "I promise," she whispered. He kissed her forehead. "Good. Because tomorrow we start planning our expansion to 20 cities, and I'm going to need my brilliant co-founder to be firing on all cylinders." 20 cities, Maya repeated, shaking her head in amazement. "A year ago, I couldn't imagine how I was going to pay next month's rent. Now we're planning to change educational access across the country. And this is just the beginning." As they got ready for bed, Maya caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked different than she had a year ago. Not just because her clothes were nicer or her hair was professionally styled, but because her eyes held something they hadn't before. Confidence, purpose, hope. Her phone buzzed one more time with a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Rodriguez, this is Carmen Vasquez from the scholarship program. I just wanted to say thank you again for believing in me. I start classes next week, and I'm going to make you proud." Maya showed the message to Alexander, who was brushing his teeth. "That," he said around his toothbrush, "is why we do this. That's why we do everything." As they settled into bed, Maya's mind was already racing with plans for the foundation's expansion. 20 cities meant hundreds of new partnerships, thousands of new applications, countless lives that could be transformed by opportunity. "Can't sleep?" Alexander asked, noticing her restlessness. "Too excited, too grateful, too amazed that this is real life." "It's real, and it's just getting started." Maya turned to look at him in the darkness. "I love you, Alexander Sterling. Wrong number and all." Quote, "I love you too, Maya Rodriguez. Best mistake I ever made." And as they drifted off to sleep, neither of them could have predicted that in 5 years, their foundation would be operating in 47 states and 12 countries, that Maya would be invited to speak at the United Nations about educational inequality, or that their love story would be taught in business schools as an example of how personal transformation can drive social change. But they both knew, with absolute certainty, that they were exactly where they belonged. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hits the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.